What's up, men? Welcome to the Male Cartel podcast. Let's get started.
Do you think men are important? Like for what?
Men are not meant to be dominant. Men are meant to be submissive.
Life's too short to exercise. I'm just gonna be honest.
It's okay to be fat.
Dispelling toxic masculinity and really redefining what it means to be a man. Men can cry. So it's okay to be weak. It's okay to be weak.
I'm telling you right now, not everybody wants to see you win.
You seem to be more woman than you are man. You don't have any manly qualities.
You give them this message that it's okay to be a man.
It's not okay, it's necessary. How are we going to do without men? You look around the city here, you see all these buildings go up, these men, they're doing impossible things.
It ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
Be a dangerous man. Being dangerous is not being a threat. They're two different things. You can't be a good man if you're not a dangerous man. You say one disrespectful thing to my wife, I am not only willing, but I'm able to inflict great bodily damage.
I'm going to do everything in my power to become a victor and not a victim. I can't explain it, but you better feel winners win and losers lose. I can't explain it any better than that. I don't know how it happens, but winners win. And if you create a culture of losing, if you keep being a victim, if you keep letting losing happen to you, if you keep letting people do you and treat you any kind of way, it's going to become a culture. What's the matter with you? There is no tomorrow. There is no tomorrow. There is no tomorrow.
Here's your host, Nick and Shane.
Welcome back, Male Cartel. We're excited to be with you. My name is Nick, and I'm with my co-host.
Dang, let's go.
We've got a special guest in the studio with us today, Mr. Mike Sizemore, or affectionately known as
Daddy Mike.
What's up? We're so excited to have him and to be able to talk with him today. I come into the studio, Shane walks in. Shane looks like he's ready to sit by a fireplace with a cup of hot cocoa, with a book. He's all...
Dude, I don't wear brown, and listen, this is the first time in probably 8 to 10 years I've ever wore a crew neck non-hoodie. You know what I'm saying?
You got the full sweats on.
He's loving that sweatshirt because this is about the 4th time I've seen him in it.
Oh,
so that's
okay.
right. So I'm like, man, this is like brown. You know, I'm just in the holiday spirit, you know.
Revival generation. Yeah, my wife says I can't wear brown with gray because they're in the same family, so...
In the same family? What are they, like
Same
cousins
color
and stuff? Hey, we're in Georgia, so, you know, you can marry your cousin, so it's all good.
You could go to Walmart and fit right in. So.
I could go to Walmart. This is that swag. This is like, I don't care. You go ahead and judge me swag. My drip.
I don't ask anybody.
You're all grayed out. You're like you just got out of prison. You're
all
like
it needs a little bit of orange. Gray is the new orange.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah. Usually I ask my wife. That's about it. I don't care what anybody else thinks. There's only one person to impress.
That's it. And you ain't got to impress her.
That's right.
Because you're Nick Carnes.
I've locked her down.
I locked her down since you were like 12. You
put a ring on it. There's no getting around it.
So. That's it. Yeah, my wife, she'll still roast me and be like, hey, you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't wear this. And I just still wear my Crocs. I still wear what I'm wearing. So... But
I saw a picture the other day with someone that had Crocs, and it said the only good use of Crocs, and it had like a bar between the two of them with a thing of like, what did they crochet with? You know, yarn.
Oh yeah.
And someone was using it for their crochet reel, so they could just keep yarning.
Dude,
you look like you're fit for that.
Yeah, I could do a little crochet. We call it crocheting. Is what we call it. But I was in New York. Came back from New York this past week, and. We had a lady there who grew up in Hong Kong and she grew up in Chinatown, which I begged our people to go to China because little China, because I told them we go to Little Tokyo all the time. So I really wanted us to go to Chinatown to eat some Chinese food, but it didn't happen. So maybe that'll happen one day. But she looked at me and she goes, oh no, those won't work. And I said, excuse me? And she said, those won't work. And I finally understood what she was saying. She was saying that I was wearing Crocs, my fuzzy Gucci fur-lined Crocs. Because it's wintertime. And so she said, those don't work because big rats run across your feet. I said, we from Georgia. We just kicked them jokers. And so she was like, oh, no. Those. And she told my daughter, who was on a trip with us, and she pulled Daisy aside and literally told her, tell your dad, those won't work. because of rats. And you and I did, I still wore them things. And no rats, got harmed. And
did you see any rat?
I saw a few. I saw human feces. Like there's some like beautiful parts. You know what's crazy? Is there legit could be horrible situations, like trash, nasty, zero order, nothing. It looks just absolutely terrible. And then you turn one corner and then there's a beautiful brand new skyscraper. Smells like new car, It just looks phenomenal. And then you're like, you see nothing but beauty everywhere.
Yeah.
You're like beauty is in like brand new buildings. Everything looks spotless in the building. There's no, and then they won't even let you sit down. I tried to sit down on a step because my leg was bothering me, and security officer ran to me immediately and said, "Hey, you need to get up. There's no sitting."
Oh, wow.
And I was like, okay, I guess I look like a bum. I was wearing Crocs, so, that might have been.
Probably thought you were homeless. Were you wearing your outfit?
No, but I was wearing joggers and Crocs. And so if I say this, punk, whatever. But yeah,
that's funny. Like in Augusta. I grew up in Harrisburg, or not, didn't grow up there, but I lived there for a short amount of time. And right around the corner, you come off of Green Street, which is by Crawford Avenue, not Green Street by the Civic Center. You turn the corner up at the top of the street, and there's the Augusta Country Club and, the large homes on Waltway Extension. But in that area, I mean, it's nothing but crime and drugs and, all kinds of problems.
Yeah.
When I came home from the hospital when I was born, we lived on Fenwick Street there in Harrisburg. So I am a Harrisburger.
Okay.
Yes.
Born and raised. And I go back there now and it's like, wow, what happened? But we were there. The lawns were kept and the houses were nicely, it was a great place to live. I grew up at Crawford Avenue Baptist Church.
Okay.
So, and both my grandmothers lived kind of down on the corner from the church. So it's like you go to church, go down to Mama's, which was my mom's mom, and have lunch there, go out the back door literally through the yard and into my grandma, which was Daddy's mother's house. And hang out there and then come back, about 6 o'clock, and then wander back over to the church, go to evening service. It was just a wonderful neighborhood to grow up in. So,
my mom grew up there, between there and on the other side, like where the Burger King and stuff is on Walton Way. I think it was Mary Street, which is the church she went to as a young girl. She walked to it because her family didn't go to church, but she lived where Goss Chiropractor used to be. And so she lived there. In fact, she fell off the porch when she was younger, and she said she probably sustained the injury that Dr. Goss had to actually treat her for there. But then by the time we moved in, it was like kids were getting beat up. One kid almost died. 3 guys jumped him for his shoes and, stuff like that. So it was quite different. In fact, we moved my basketball goal. It was kind of that you had to concrete into the ground. It didn't have the base and all. It wasn't, wealthy like that.
Yeah.
And so we had pulled it out of the ground, carried it. It was laying in the front yard. That was the one night. Go to sleep, wake up, go to school. I come home, the whole basketball goal is gone. Someone, obviously 2 or 3 people just picked it up and walked it out of our yard.
Wow.
So if it wasn't bolted down, it was gone. So.
My sister's husband, they lived almost right there where the road split. His mother was a florist, and their florist shop was right there, and their house was right there behind the florist. And then Nana lived in the house behind there, so they were all just kind of right there in that corner. And but yeah, I know exactly where you're talking about.
Yeah, just about every city has that. You go around the corner, and you go from poverty to country club.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah. That's people look at my wife and she looks awesome. Then they look
turn
at me, turn the
like,
corner, see me, and they're like, "He's a bum." So
I think that's all of us.
That's right. So we have a guest. So we're excited.
Yeah.
You want us to kickstart? You want to catch up? You want to just dive into this?
The only thing I wanted to kind of give an update on and give a shout out, because he is a regular listener, is my own son, Gavin. As I shared, he was in an auto accident, shattered his femur. And so he has been out of work, but also on crutches. Thankfully, he was out of the hospital the next day after surgery. They were saying 3 to 5 days, but I think because he's fit and strong, that has helped him. But he went for his first physical therapy the other day. Got his stitches out, or staples. It wasn't stitches. But doing well. In fact, he's been trying to kind of walk on his own without crutches. And they said as much as he can put on it, go ahead and do it. And then also said that he can start going back to the gym. He can start driving again. And so they expect a full recovery 6 months. But they said get back in the gym, do as light as you can, and work your way up until you start feeling some pain, and then back off so that you don't overdo it. But he'll be in physical therapy for a while, but still, I mean, he's hobbling through the house. You know, he's determined. So when we talk about Male Cartel and guys, you know, doing hard things and difficult things, I just want to give a shout out to him because he's doing it. And, you know, as a young man, not laying around, not letting it get the best of him, but really just putting forth the effort, working through the pain to get better.
He's a Carnes. Gavin, proud of you, bro. Let's go. Proud of you. And we also have, you had news about Producer Carrel?
Yeah,
you want to share that? You know, do you want me to start with what I mentioned earlier before?
Go ahead,
production?
and I'll tell you before we get to Mike.
So here's the deal. I asked Producer Carrel because I've always wanted to ask this question. Producer Carrel, for those who don't know, he's African American. Okay, he looks just like Denzel Washington, and I asked him. I said, "What's your flavor? Do you like white girls?
As he's laughing.
Do you like Asian girls?" And
well, Denzel without hair.
Denzel without hair. Yeah, clarify. He's more like Denzel and the Equalizer.
Equalizer.
Okay?
Denzel.
So I said, "What do you like? What, like Asian? Do you like African American? Like, you know, do you like white girls?" And he responded. He likes it. And he sung the little Bible song. And so in essence, he likes the whole crayon box.
Oh, the whole
not
crayon box.
just the ones that come with the 8 or the cheaper ones at Kmart that came with 6 that break all the time. But he likes the 64 count. The what now?
Or the restaurant.
Oh yeah,
4.
the restaurant 4. There's
no.
He is, for those who are listening, Producer Carrel, he likes the whole crayon box. The 64 with the sharpener.
Oh yeah.
And so
they're all precious in his sight.
Exactly. So like, that's awesome. So,
that's why when we ask him if he has a woman, he says no because he's got 64.
64.
Even brick red.
That's it, man. Like he's window
Rose
shopping.
pink.
That's it, dude. He got the gold, the yellow gold.
That's just in her mouth.
So what do you have to say? I need to know this information. The audience is waiting right now.
Before Gavin was told he could start driving again, which is still going to be limited, but Carrel was taking up. They go to a young adult thing on Monday night together downtown, and it's called the Foundry. I butchered the word the other day. I forget what it was. So Carrel kind of is always on a regiment. So I like when on my day off, we have a Ring doorbell on our admin, and like it'll go off at certain times, and I know it's Carrel because it's like he's arriving. He's going to get coffee. He's going to take his trash out. He's going to lunch. Like it's almost to the T. So Gavin was saying, you know, Carrel would take him and could bring him back, but he always has to leave before 9 o'clock because he has to go to Publix before going home. So we didn't want to interrupt that schedule, and so we didn't want him having to drive Gavin all the way back to the church or to our house.
Oh, I think I know what you're about to say.
And so we get to Publix near Carrel's house to pick Gavin up, and I said, "Hey man, why are you going, you know, grocery shopping at 9 p.m.?" And then I said, "Do you have a special lady here that you're meeting up with?" And this is how he replied. He said, "The deli is closed." And I said, "Oh, the deli is closed. So obviously there is a woman who works the deli."
Yeah.
Because when I said, "Do you have a woman here?" he didn't say no. He just said the deli's closed. So he was legitimately there to get groceries, but there are times he goes to go see the deli lady. Miss, I don't know what that would be called.
Miss Jones. Miss Jenkins.
Miss Jenkins.
Miss Jenkins that works in the
me
deli.
and Mrs. Jones, we got a thing going on.
That's it.
Then
That's
I
exactly
asked
right.
him yesterday, I said, "Hey man, I was going to ask you if you want to go get a cold cut at Publix so that we could go see the deli lady." And he said, "I don't know anyone on the day shift."
It's a night shift.
She works the evening shift before closing. So I'm gonna have to go up to Publix and check out Miss Jenkins or Miss
reconnaissance.
Jones or whoever it is. So,
Yeah, we send you on a mission, dude. Reconnaissance
Yes.
from the Male
I'm
Cartel.
gonna go order me a sub from Publix.
At 8:30.
He gave himself away.
8:30. You need a 6-inch.
That's right.
Cold cut combo. Man,
Carrel, what kind of sandwich do you get? He won't tell me. So
yeah,
I'm gonna ask.
Find out, and then you order the same exact unto the T.
I'm just gonna ask every lady. I'll be like, hey, the guy that comes in, it looks like Denzel, from Equalizer. What does he order? Just give me that.
I'm here for the Carrel special.
The Carrel's producer special.
I'm gonna hook him up. Well, why don't you introduce?
Yeah, so this is we have here. I'm looking at Daddy Mike, and he's looking sharp today. Very handsome. And I've known Daddy Mike for many years. So those who are watching and listening, you're seeing who he is. I've known him since I've been in really a few years into ministry. So about 2 decades, close to it at least.
Yep.
And so huge influence in my life. So I don't have a dad, and he's the closest thing to a dad that I have. And so, and he also serves in our ministry, helps with a lot of leadership. And I'm just super excited about Daddy Mike being here, and there's a lot of stuff that I can talk about.
And he brought us a gift.
Yes, dude, he made us some chicken wings, bro. Smoked them, brined them. He did everything. Secret sauce, you named it. Smells awesome. And,
I just met him in person, and I love him already. So.
Pizza, bro. Let's go. So I have first question I have, and I think this is a really good starting point for us, is tell us about yourself. We know that you grew up in Harrisburg.
Yes.
We got that on the record.
Yeah.
But tell us like how you grew up. What does today look like? For your everyday look like your job, your family, your kids, the age.
Sure.
Just all the things about Daddy Mike.
Yeah. Well, first off, thanks for letting me be here. This is one of those I can't believe I'm in the room kind of moments for me. I'm humbled and grateful to be able to be here and kind of share a little bit with you guys. So this is fun. Born and raised Augusta. Way back, Moses and I were in the same kindergarten kind of thing. So 1955, Augusta, Georgia. Born at St. Joseph Hospital and came home to a home in the Harrisburg section of Augusta. 2-parent home, mom and dad, and dad was a Marine Corps veteran, was in World War II, and their parents kind of lived close to each other, and they got together after World War II, and he came back home. And I was sort of a miracle child. They had been married nearly 10 years before I came along because the doctors had told them they would not have any kids. So, but anyway, so we grew up in that little house there in Harrisburg, and then we eventually moved to Vineland. And I had an interrupter come along, and my sister came along 3 years later. But we lived there in Vineland, and what was kind of unique about that was. With the Augusta National being literally, just the other side of where we lived. Of course, we heard all the stories that, there are guards out there, there are machine guns in the trees, don't ever go across the line. But we would, be able to sit on the porch and hear the roars of the crowd. And you'd know, depending on the roar, whether it was, of course, back then it would have been Saracen or Sneed or Hogan or somebody like that, because at that point, Palmer was sort of the new kid on the block, and Nicholas was just coming along. And so we were there for a few years, and then eventually moved out to just off Warren Road, and finished up my high school and some of my college years there. In fact, both mom and dad, when they passed away, they were still there in that home. So I can remember, Washington Road being a 2-lane road. I-20 did not exist. In fact, my aunt, my mother's older sister, and her husband, uncle, their house was about where the off-ramp coming from South Carolina would be. And we'd sit there on the porch some Sunday afternoons when we were hanging out there, and my grandmother, my mother, and 2 of her sisters were shelling peas, or we were cranking homemade ice cream, and every now and then a car would go up Washington Road. It was just that was kind of what it was like, and so that was so Augusta was It was very small town. When I was growing up, I was in the first complete graduating class out of West Side. So when it was built, the first graduating class was 71, and those that had been at the academy had the option to finish up there or to come to West Side. And so that first 2 years were the folks that could have gone, to either school, but those of us, and back then it was just 10th, 11th, 12th grade. So our class was the first class to go through all 3 years there, and so did that. I went to Augusta College, Action City, Harvard on the Hill. We called it a lot of different things back then, but I was there for a couple of years. And then Dean McNeil brought me into his office one day and asked me to kind of really realign and think about my priorities. They offered me a vacation for about 6 months. That's a nice way of saying I was tossed out because my grades were terrible. And so I spent about 6 months not going to school. And my dad was a smart guy, and he. So he put me to work for him, and one of the very first days that I was doing that, I was out on a construction site, and he did commercial sound equipment, so like church PA systems. Of course, they're way more elaborate today than what we did, but that school PA systems, fire alarms, those kind of things, and then intercoms. And back in those days, people put these Newtone intercom systems in their homes. But I'm out on the construction site, standing around the 55-gallon barrel drum, trying to keep my hands warm on this construction site. And I realized at that point, something's got to change here. I've got to realign my priorities. I love the man skills I'm learning, but I think I want to do something different. And so I had to go back to Augusta College for 1 quarter in order to at least get a grade where I could move on. And then went to Georgia Southern, and getting in there is if we get a chance, we'll come back to that story. But how I got into Southern, but finished up there, got my degree, and came back. And so other than a stint in Statesboro, Georgia, for about 2.5 years, Augusta's been home now, for just a little over 68 years now.
Yeah. So you married?
Yes, absolutely.
Tell me about your rib.
Yes. So Miss Connie is the queen of the house. She and I we met at Curtis Baptist Church, and it was funny. People talked about it was almost like watching a tennis match. I sat over here, she was over here. And, we're kind of looking and people are watching. Okay, when is this ever going to actually happen? Because we'd stand around at the water fountain and chat. We'd stand out in the parking lot. It'd be like February, and it's like 18 degrees, and we're just out there talking. And her dad came to me one Sunday morning, and because he and Barbara had noticed, kind of what all was going on. And he told me, sat me down, and said, now, if you would like to, go out with Connie, we want you to know that Barbara and I approve. Of course, that scared me to death, not because I didn't want to, but it was like, wow, but it was still another couple of months before I finally got up the courage to ask her out. And so February 6th, 1986, I went and picked her up. I had a Toyota. I had on my khakis and my two-tone buck shoes and a sweater. And but I'll never forget pulling up into that driveway on Haley Road, walked up to the front door, knocked on the door. She opened the door. I stepped through the threshold of that house. And as I sit here today, I will tell you, I'd been smitten with her for a long time, but I walked through that door, and in my mind, I said, I am home. And 7 months to the day of that first date, we walked the aisle at Curtis on September 6th of 86, and that was 37 plus years ago.
Man. And you got three boys?
3 men.
Man, the boy dad, boy mom.
Yeah. So, so three sons. Michael, my oldest, And he like myself, he graduated from Georgia Southern, and then went back actually several years after getting out of college. Went back and was accepted into the Masters of Accounting program at UNC Chapel Hill, which that's a big deal getting into that school. But he went back, and now he has Masters in Accounting. Scott, our middle son, who's one of our worship leaders at the Warren Grovetown campus, did their semester at Liberty. Thank you, Lord. He came home. I'm not sure if my bank account would have covered 4 years up there. He came back, graduated from Augusta, whatever it was, back the year he graduated, because it's had several names since then. But and he's married to Miss Caroline, and they have two. Mac, our oldest grandchild, he's 6, and Maggie's 4, and Maggie is very good at being 4. And once Maggie came along and actually began to be able to communicate, I realized why God gave me only sons and never a daughter, because it would have been over with. Truth. And then Matt was a bit of a surprise. He came along several years later, and he's married to Courtney, his wife, and they have one little boy, Jace, and we have a granddaughter in heaven. She baby Faith was a miscarriage, so we actually have 4 grandkids. Just 3 are here, and one we're waiting to see one day. And so that's family. Now all of them are here, and so we don't live probably more than 20 minutes either direction from any. In fact, Scott moved more recently, so we're actually about 8 minutes from his house, and about 20 from Matt and Courtney. So yeah,
boom,
life's good.
Boom.
You have been in various different leadership capacities. From what Shane was telling me, some of the different roles that you've played, not only with church, but also in business and things like that.
Sure.
What would be some leadership principles that have guided you personally? As well, what would you tell, we have various different leaders from different stages of life and different capacities that tune in, especially young guys, football players, you name it. I believe everybody's a leader just by leading yourself. That's true. The first level of leadership.
Yeah.
What are some things that you've learned along the way in serving and being a leader of other people, but also something that you could pass on, maybe a nugget of truth or helpful to some of those leaders tuning in?
Yeah, absolutely. A great question, by the way. So, and I'll preface it with this: if I mention a name as we're going through some of this, please understand, I'm not name dropping, but I do want to give credit where credit is due, and to give some context to when some of the statements that I might make, kind of where they're coming from. So I've got a friend down in Orlando. He's a little older than me, retired, gentleman by the name of Lee Cockrell. And Lee made this statement, and I think it's true, that leadership is not a title that you have. It's not the corner office. It's not the C-suite. It's the sum total of the actions that you take. So just because you've got the title of sales manager or, COO or CEO or pastor or whatever it is, the title doesn't make you the leader. It's the actions that you take. It's the things that you do. And in leadership, kind of like, and I'm not saying that all leaders are only men. Don't get me wrong for the ladies that are listening, but leadership is like, in some ways, is like that manhood thing. It's, we do hard stuff. Leaders do hard things. Leaders have to make decisions, sometimes that they don't like, but they have to do it and they have to execute it.
Right.
Leaders need to be truthful all the time. Sometimes you can't sweeten it up. And I had to learn this the hard way. I was blessed to be in some leadership positions very early on in my life, in my teen years and in my early 20s in particular. And I didn't want to hurt people's feelings. And so I would try to sweeten it up, or I'd try to soft sell it. And something that could be said in 30 seconds or less, I took 20 minutes. And by the time I got done, everybody there, including me, was confused about what I had said or why I had brought it up. And so you need to be truthful, and you need to execute, and you're going to have to do it whether you like it or not, and you're going to have to lead them through it and help them to do it whether they like it or not. And so that's all a part of it, and that's why I say it's not, leadership is not for, it's not for the faint of heart. So that's just some of the things that as I look back over all the years that are sort of key points.
Yeah, that's good.
Are there any wins or losses that you've learned from over the years? Would you mind sharing?
Oh, yeah. The losses are far more than the wins, and that's I guess that's that entrepreneurial side of me that I have again have been blessed to have done a number of things in life, and I spent probably the majority of my lifetime, work lifetime, in the temp staffing business. And I always joke with people about the reason I was in that, because I really had no idea what I wanted to do in life. And the more things I saw other people doing, I might figure out, hey, I think I'd like to do that and go into it. But the losses, though they are more painful, you learn more lessons from that. And couple of examples with the temp staffing business. We would go into different cities, and part of my role as a VP of operations is I would go into a community. I would look, what are the potentials here? What might we be able to do? Where are we going to put office space in? Who are we going to have to hire? What is that budget going to look like? How long can we stay before we have to sometimes cut and run? And so each time we would do that, some of those ended up being very profitable businesses that we had. Other times we were there for 6 months to a year, and we were burning cash, and so we had to make a decision to cut and run. But each time, when you're doing well and the office is growing and things are going well, it's just kind of like the old. If any of you remember the old Jetsons cartoon, yep. I kind of felt like George. Pull up, walk in, punch the button, prop my feet up on the desk, and it just goes. But in those times where it did not, where we lost money, and I'm not talking a couple of $100 here, we're talking sometimes tens of thousands, if not more. Sometimes that would be the case, and you have to pull out. You can't walk away going, I blew it, defeated. You've got to look at, okay, it didn't work. We all knew what the risks were going in. What did we learn from that? And then the next time when we go with that memory in there, and hopefully not make that mistake again. So one of the funniest wins that I had was I got connected up with a construction company out of Florida, and they were building private prisons. And so for 3 years, we followed these guys literally all over the country. I had operations from Georgia all the way to California, where we laughingly called it jails or us, and we were supplying primarily entry-level labor and rod busters and some other things for them to build these prisons. And so that was fun, and that was a big win. Probably one of the worst toe stumps we had was an office we had down in Southwest Georgia. And as hard as we tried and with the connections we had there, it just didn't go. And I'll never forget the final day we were there. We were packing up the office, and it was also payday for the folks that we had working. And so we're waiting on one of the overnight delivery, I won't mention who, one of the overnight delivery companies to show up with the payroll. And so, and we're in this little strip shopping center, strip shopping center. And so some of these folks are actually helping to load the furniture into the truck that I've got there. And we're waiting, 10 o'clock gets here, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, delivery guy's not there. And there's a convenience store kind of down on the other end, and so a number of the people that are sitting there waiting on their paychecks had been going down there, and they weren't buying a big gulp. They were getting them a Bud or a Mickey,
40. They were getting a 40.
Mad Dog 40-40.
Yeah.
So,
Getting a double deuce.
So it's getting to be
Real
about
big.
3 o'clock, and I've got to get on the road. I've got to get back to Augusta with this truck and all this furniture. And of course, like I say, a number of my employees had been drinking for some time. But again, that leadership thing, having to say to them, look, the folks haven't gotten here with checks. And I know that's why you're here. And I want you to believe that it is coming. I finally was able to get on the phone and find out that it missed whatever the transfer was supposed to be, and so it was another day before it got there. But pulling away and looking at those people, including the staff that I had, because they lived there, and they were going to have to deal with the aftermath of this after I'm gone. But the trust that we had built up, even though it didn't end the way we wanted it to, there wasn't a big fight or them laying down in front of the truck, not letting me leave. But we had built up enough trust with them that even in that situation, they believed, because we had been consistent every week before that in paying them, that money was coming and they would get paid. So that was probably one of the ones that stands out for me.
Yeah, you think of like taking a loss or taking an L as like now the slang term is just L or W, and you think of L being loss, but I think that really speaks to like fortitude and like we talk about being a man. It's just getting your tail back up. We mentioned Rocky a whole lot, but it's like it says a lot about your character, your integrity, when you can take that loss and make it a learn, make it a different L. And I think that for manhood, that is like what one of the key elements of being a man is just learning. And especially in leadership like that, I think I know for me, I learned way more in my losses than I ever do in my wins, and how to improve and get better. And so as a boy dad, I have 2 boys, they love you. And Nick has 2 boys, and they're a little bit older. But I know that our audience listens, those who listen to us, part of the Male Cartel, a lot of them have kids, especially young men. And so do you have any wisdom? You have 3 boys. So any tips, nuggets, like anything, give us like your top 3, if you wouldn't mind.
So, as if Miss Connie were here, she would say, you beat him early, beat him often, but pray with him, pray for him every day. And one of the things that we made sure of that we did, we always had a family altar with kids. Every night, now I say every night, the majority of nights. So that was one of the things was making sure that they understood how significant the Bible and how significant Christ was in our home. And so that was one. And I realize as I say this next thing, this is not going to be true for every family or every man or woman that's listening. But one of the things that we did with our boys as they got a little bit older, we had a covenant with them that we did with them and had them to sign that made them aware that mom and dad are here. We're here for the long term. Dad's not going to cut and run. Mom's not going to, no matter how rough or how bad things get. We made a covenant before God back in September of 86, and that's going to stand for all time. And so them having that security of knowing that there's going to be a 2-parent home. Like I say, that was what we did there. And another thing was that we can, to a fault, overprotect, nanny state our kids. Now, ours didn't have phones until they were 16, till they were able to drive. We didn't let them do sleepovers and a lot of things like that maybe other kids were doing. And there were some toys they could have, some shows they could or couldn't watch, that kind of thing. But know this, and especially today, which is more prevalent now than it was when ours were coming along, but there are going to be teachable moments. Things you had not planned that are going to pop up. Somebody's going to say something. You're going to be at a family gathering and, something's going to come out that probably shouldn't, or a commercial or something on TV. Don't feel like, that's a hand grenade that went off and you've got to somehow dive on top of them to protect them from the shrapnel that just happened. But you use it as a teachable moment. It has happened. You can't do anything about it. But at that point, call a timeout, stop. Say, okay, this just happened. You just heard that. You just saw that. Let me explain to you why that's inappropriate or why we don't do that or we don't say that. So don't feel like you can't address the elephant in the room. Go ahead immediately and do it and use that as a teachable moment. So that'd be just 3 I can think of off the top of my head.
I could tell you that's somebody who works with young people, and either you I would say majority of the people that I know that have kids, especially when you're younger, they either land, and I know you see this too, Nick, they either land on one side or the other. Like, oh, I don't care. It's all going to pan out. And then, or they're like helicopter, like you mentioned, jump on the grenade, put it out, and their kid never, ever goes through that tension. And I think that's a good word of just using those moments as teachable moments. I mean, we do that in sports, There's a timeout, there's something that happens like, hey, let me tell you, I do it with my boys. Whenever I have to do, the battery the other day was messing with my truck. And so I had my Andrew, who's my 9-year-old, come out and I said, all right, I may not be here, but maybe your mama's car here with the van. I'm going to show you my truck. This is how it works. And he helped do everything. And then the whole time, Diana, my wife, she was just like, she saw us out there for probably 45 minutes. And then she was kind of getting upset going, he doesn't need to work with jumper cables. He doesn't need, and I was like, no, he's fine. I've taught him. He understands. He can totally tell you everything. But she was really like, no, that's what dads do. You do it when you're older. And I was like, no, like he is completely fine. But using those moments as a teachable moment. So as a dad, what I have to do, like literally what I know that I have to do is I have to, instead of just doing it on my own, like quickly, do like what your dad taught you how to, like Nick, like your dad teaching you how to like work on a car. Like I've got to make time. Instead of just Shane can do it quicker by myself, I just bring my kid with me to teach him. So like even when it's in those moments, as well as the moments that like what you just mentioned,
and that's a leadership and a dad skill. And I was really bad for a lot of years about it's easier for me. I can do it quicker if I just do it.
Yeah.
But I think back, my dad would get me involved in things that he was doing so that I could learn. A couple of the houses that we lived in, he built a fireplace and knocked down a wall and built an extra room and all. But I was there to help with a lot of that. When Matt went to camp up in North Carolina a couple of times, they would have these man skill things where they were teaching them, just like you're talking about, changing a tire. And I think back that I missed some opportunities with all 3 of mine to have done those kind of things. Real funny story, real quick. Connie, her dad, my father-in-law Scott, rebuilt 32 Fords from what a 32 was into a street rod. And he had a couple of nice show cars. He had a Mustang Shelby, had a 57 T-Bird, which when we left the church and headed to the reception, we left in the T-Bird. And so she's been around building, helping rebuild cars and all this kind of stuff. And we were talking about buying a new car at some point, and she went to, I won't say the dealership, well, they're not here anymore, but went to the dealership, and she was looking, and the salesman came out and just kind of blew her off and said, well, kind of like, honey, when you're ready and you want to bring your, bring your husband back, we can talk. And she just left. And what he didn't know was that she had the cash money in her bank account that day to buy that vehicle that she wanted. And she walked off the lot, came home and told me. I called the sales manager and I said, just want to make you aware. I said, my wife was there earlier. She was prepared to buy, she was prepared to buy that particular vehicle, but your salesman said this to her, and he was a little bit apologetic, but not a whole lot. And I said, and by the way, just so you know, I said, she used to work with her dad. She could probably rebuild half that motor. She could change out the water pump. She can change the plugs and the wires, and she can do a brake job on that car. And then I heard him just go, so but yeah, but and again, that's a rabbit hole. Sorry, but it's so critical that we teach them those things and let them experience it so that they can when it happens for them, they just stand there going, oh, what do I do now?
Yeah. I missed the opportunity with Haley the other day. She's taken automotive. She's also taken welding, I guess, because she's got 2 older brothers. So she's actually welding something at the house, but I asked her if they had taught her how to do brakes yet, because just all of a sudden mine started sounding like they were grinding. I had not heard it before. Well, it just kind of within a day was getting worse. I was like, I need to fix these now. Well, when she was prepared to help me, I had other things going on, and I said, I don't even have the brakes yet. Well, Gavin and I went somewhere, and I said, I've got to do this tonight. Well, by the time I got home, she was asleep. So I was up till 1 a.m. doing the brakes, which I would have been fine with her staying up with me, but she was already in bed, so I didn't go wake her up. So the next brake job, I want to make sure she's out there because she's showing interest in those things. And, she can learn it just as good as anyone. But even with my boys, when I would go out of town, I would tell Nikki, like if something were to happen, the boys know where my guns are and they know how to use them. It's just like, you think that's safe, them knowing where? I said, yeah, we've gone through all the safety training. They know it's not a toy. They've shot it. They know how powerful it is. They know the danger. We've gone through all the safety training. And the targets are on their wall. You can go see how good they are. They can hit a target. So versus Nikki, when I took her shooting the first time, it scared her, the kick, and she starts just handing it to me with her finger still on the trigger. I'm just like, you're gonna, did you up my, life insurance this morning? What are you doing? And so I'm like, trust me until you learn, which she's now wanting to learn, and I'll share that story. What happened here recently that I'm getting her a gun, but now she's showing an interest. Like, hey, do you want to go to the shooting range? And I said, well, we can go out. My dad's property is free. He's got plenty of property. We set up targets out there and shoot all the time. So now she's showing a little more interest. I'm going to start her on something a little less, maybe.
You bought my BB gun, bro.
Yeah,
I got for Christmas.
We've got one.
Okay, all right, just you need to borrow mine.
One of the follow-up, just a comment based on something you had said a moment ago, and then I've got kind of a follow-up question before the planned question that I had. One, I saw a video, and we can put it in the show notes. I'll try to remember what you were saying about leadership being, some people look at it as having that title. And this little reel was talking about how it's not a title. In fact, leadership is, really you're working yourself out of a job, because if you're leading people, you're developing other people, and you're reproducing yourself to take your place. Talking about our kids, one day we may not be here, so we want them to know how to fix a vehicle or whatever that might be, protect themselves. But then the video goes on to say that the title leadership is actually slavery, because if that's what you deem as leadership, then you'll never outgrow that, because you'll always cling to the title. And so I thought that was very interesting, what you were saying about people being wrapped up in a, in a title and stuff like that. But you mentioned the, kind of the job and the business that you ran with placement, employment placing and temporary
placement
hires and stuff like that, security officers, all the things that had your name, public name on it. How important is it? And this is kind of just a follow-up question, as you were talking about those people waiting on their paycheck and things like that. How important is having a good name? How important is it to have a good reputation? We've got a lot of young guys facing decisions, and they may think in the moment versus long term, and their name can be tarnished over a long term period. but when your name's public, and really all of our names are, how important is that to have a good reputation and a good name?
Okay, so quick disclaimer. My last name is a name that is very prominent here in the Augusta area, and has been since 1955. Excuse me, shameless plug for the family business. But I did work there briefly, but but that is extended family, and that is not part of the work that I was involved in at that point. No, that's okay. But just want to clarify that that's I was in that business, but it was a different company. But you're right. From a standpoint of the name, whether it's my name that is posted on the door or some other name that's there, it still goes back to who you are, and you can spend a lifetime doing good stuff, taking care of people, running a not just a legitimate business, but a business that does well and helps people, and you could have 10 employees, you could have 200 or 300 or more, and especially in today where we have all this social media and everybody basically has got the opportunity to put you out there for the entire world to see because of the phone that they carry in their pocket. You do one thing. Say one wrong thing, think you got away with something, and it's plastered out there, and all of a sudden, everything you've done in your life, no matter how good it was, is gone just like that. So you do have to think about everything that you do, how you do it, why you do it, but unless you have that plumb line, that moral compass inside of you that is going to, and for those of us that are believers, the Holy Spirit prompting us, this is not the road to walk down. Stop right now. When we blow through those roadblocks, we are risking the fact that we're going to lose a reputation we worked a lifetime to build. And it doesn't matter how many times you say, I messed up, my bad, I misspoke, whatever term that people are using these days. Once you've done that, it may take a long time for you to rebuild that reputation, if in fact you ever do. So it is important to have that core belief, that moral compass, and again, for the believer in Christ, the Holy Spirit in you, that says this is the way, walk in it, or don't ever dare think you can go down that road and not pay for it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
One of the things you've expressed, even seeing Augusta change over the years, and so you've got some experience behind you. What would you say is maybe one of the big, and some of these things may not have even changed over time, because challenges are challenges.
Yeah.
But what would you say for guys and men are maybe some of the biggest challenges that you see them facing today? Maybe that has changed somewhat because of internet or other kind of pressures. And then what would you say are some solutions to help them kind of navigate some of those challenges as they're facing them, maybe as new dads or as new husbands or as longtime husbands and longtime fathers?
Yeah.
What are some of those challenges you see in front of men, and kind of how can they navigate through those, some solutions?
Okay. So, today we are, and this began a number of years ago, but we are, especially if, like movies and TV and those kind of things, we're the brunt of the joke. The dad is always the one that fumbles and bumbles, and so we're immediately in a lot of the public's eye. We're on we're at the plate, and it's already a 2-strike count just because of that, and the stereotypes and everything that we're called just by trying to be who we've been called to be, which is to be men. And I thought about it, and you had asked me, or you had put this question down as to what is a man. And I had been thinking about that question a lot since you brought it up, and I'll get to that in a second. But I don't think that today is much more significant as far as what we should be doing that I was or wasn't doing back in the 70s, and now it's 2023. I think we're still facing the fact that at some point, as Jay Strack would say, the little boy's got to sit down and the man has got to stand up. And we've got to understand what our roles are as men. We do have to do hard things. We do have to protect and provide. We do have to make difficult decisions at times, and we're designed, in my opinion, we're designed by God as those leaders. We're out there to hunt, to trap, to kill, so that everybody can eat, but we eat last. We've got to be, we need to be humble in spirit, but at the same time, when, as my dad used to say, you can do a lot of things. You can take as many shots at me as you want to, but when you start messing with what's mine, you're going to have to deal with me. And I may be a lot older now, but again, going back to the Harrisburg thing, we weren't lions. We were more like Wolverines, but you would know you'd been in a fight, kind of thing. So we've got to understand that those are part of our roles. And again, like I say, today it is more difficult because the world, as soon as we start talking about masculinity, all of a sudden now we're toxic. We've got to ignore that. That's a few voices that have some really loud platforms, but that is not. We don't need to back down off of that. We need to continue to be who we have been called to be. And of course now 2 out of my 3 are married, but their wives weren't looking for a guy that was just going to roll over and be passive. They were looking for guys who were going to be men and lead their home and lead it well and do the things they're supposed to do to provide. And so for guys that are out there today that are struggling with kind of what am I supposed to do or be, God implanted in you, in your core, exactly who you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to act and respond and do. And you've got to go, and again, for me, I've got to go search Scripture and see what Scripture says about manhood. And of course, Christ being the best example of that. And then I've got to mimic that in my life. I can't worry about what the latest, pop star or TV news personality or the 11:30 guys that are on it. And I can't care about that. I'm not going to answer to Stephen Colbert one day. I'm going to answer to God Almighty. And whether or not I was the man that He called me to be, doing the things that He called me to be, to the best of my abilities, and with His help to do it and do it well.
That's good.
That's big time, and I do think that's probably one of the heartbeats behind Nick and I just doing a podcast, just so we can encourage men to step it to the plate and be men and do hard things. And I know we have a lot of listeners and that are trying to figure it out and giving it all they got. And I know some personally that have reached out and just saying, hey, I'm taking these small steps towards manhood and being a better man. And as we always say, 1% better. And so, and
even Producer Carrel, he sent us a picture.
That's right. He did send us a picture
from the gym.
That was huge. And he went inside too.
He did go inside. So, now, he didn't say he worked out. He just said he went inside.
Okay, listen.
He might have to go to the bathroom. I don't know.
He could have, but at least he walked to the bathroom though, right?
Hey.
Hey. So, something happened recently. This is a little fun part. Love to know your take on it. 13-0 FSU got snubbed, number 5. As of today, was released that they are like 2 touchdown underdogs versus Georgia, but yet they were undefeated. And And so, what is your thoughts on them getting snubbed? Do you think that they should have?
I thought you were going to lead. I thought you were going to lead with what it was his thoughts about Georgia Southern beating Florida, but I'm sorry.
Yeah, I already knew that. I already knew that. That was years ago. We haven't recovered since like 08, so we've been trash ever since. And so, the Lord teaches us humility, and so, remember where we came from. We set up.
There you go.
Some remembering stones and so.
So now, 4 weeks ago, if you'd asked me, what do I think the final's going to be, I would have said it was going to be Georgia and Oregon. I think it. Bo Nix is going to continue to do well, and Georgia's going to find a way. I mean, they were a slow start just about in every game this year, but somehow they were going to find their way to get there, and so that was my pick to begin with. I think the easiest thing for the committee to have done would have been to put Florida State in there as a 13-0 team, and that'd have been it. How you take somebody that was 8 and move them to 4, somebody that was 1 and move them to 5. I think the committee's looking at a lot of different things. They're looking at who travels well and those kind of things, and so I think it was. I think it was more of a political decision than one that actually made sense. But again, we're talking about, the NCAA and we're talking about politics. None of it makes sense anymore. Yeah, so I think they got robbed. I mean, long and short of it is that they should have been in there. And going back to where Southern was back when we were in 1AA football, it was a 12-team playoff. You worked your way through. And so them going to a more expanded playoff next year will end a lot of this nonsense. But long and short of it is they got robbed.
I wish that we do. I'm all for like the 6-team playoff, and then the top 1, top 2 get buys, and then they kind of. I think that's how, or 7. We go to 7. Mm-hmm. I think that's how it would work. But yeah, the Jordan Davis. They had a 3rd-string quarterback in the last game, FSU speaking, and he was a 4-star recruit, and he threw 55 yards. And I was like, oh, this is not going to look good. And then they barely squeaked by. We were in the New York hotel watching this whole thing from half on. And I was like, man, they just look terrible. They absolutely just don't look good. And I bet you it's going to come back and haunt them as bad as they look. And I was reading an article, and basically they were saying, like, if the old boy had the 3rd stringer that played, if he had a really good game and then they just blew the doors off, they probably would have put them in FSU. That's 13-0. Well, but with not, it was like, and then Texas blows out their opponent, and which makes it, okay, right now this is not playing good ball, and Texas is playing phenomenal ball. My championship, my final was going to be Michigan and UGA. I had them.
But just going back to the 3rd string guy, like we talk about, being a man, you've got to be ready at any moment to stand up. Again, I'm going back to my dad. He was the oldest of 3 boys. Imagine that, another 3-boy scenario. His youngest brother's Down syndrome. His dad died when he was in his 30s. So now my dad basically has to quit school in order to care for their family in the 30s during the Depression. And then he joins the Marine Corps and goes and fights in World War II. And when you look at some of all of these, we think of D-Day, we think of Normandy, but every time there was an assault somewhere going on the beach, the term was D-Day. But he was on the first wave of assaults, both on Saipan and Tinian, headed toward a point where eventually, in fact, when they took the island of Tinian, that is where the planes were based that eventually dropped the bombs in Japan. So, excuse me, the work they did there led to our ability to end World War II. But he had to, he wasn't ready for it, who is, but he had to step up.
Yeah.
And so, for young guys today, I don't care if you're 10 or 12 or 14, you got to be thinking now, begin with the end in mind. Where do you want to be? What do you need to be learning? Because who knows, at any given moment, your time's going to come and you're going to have to stand up and do. And yeah, it might not be the greatest first performance, but we talked about wins and losses. You're going to learn from those. You can't walk away with your tail tucked between your legs and woe is me and throw the pity party. You've got to, okay, what did I learn from that? How can I get better? I'll go back to my buddy Lee Cockrell down in Florida. Lee's father-in-law was an admiral during World War II, and he made this comment: think about today when today's over with. What did you do well? What did you not do well? And where did you really just screw it up? Okay, forgive yourself. The end of the day, look at all of that and forgive yourself for what did not go well. And tomorrow you strive to do better at whatever that is, so that bad thing doesn't happen again. And for some of these guys, whether it's sports, whether it's the classroom, whether it's your dating or whatever it may be, you've got to be prepared to step into that A role and do it well. But you've got to plan, you've got to prepare, you've got to school yourself for that, so that when that time comes, and it will come, that you're ready for it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and I think talk about struggle. I mean, Alabama struggled against, was it Central Florida? It was like something. Yeah. It was like 12-3, or I mean, and they benched their starting quarterback, and so he had that time to get better through the season. So I do think. So they made the provision to where they could make this decision. So rightfully, they could make that decision based on what they've got in their rules, based on team. If there's a significant change in the team, they can opt out. But I think when you look at the history of sports, the undefeated team, is better than the team with one loss until it gets into the playoffs. And so I do think Florida State should have been put in, and they just are dealt the cards they dealt with. If they got slaughtered, they got slaughtered. But you got a whole month to prepare. The second string guy is going to be back. The third string guy was like, I heard it was like 15 minutes before the game, he was told, he was getting the start. I'm not sure how accurate that is, but people cite TCU, but they forget TCU beat Michigan
man.
to get to Georgia. Georgia was just that good. No one wants to give Georgia credit for blowing them out, but also some teams have bad games and you just end up,
and schematics too. Some teams just
the momentum keeps going. Yeah, right. Yeah. So, it's just all the different excuses, but then you hear about, well, Alabama beat the number 1 Georgia, but then people are saying, well, Georgia was overrated. Well, if they were so overrated, how does a number 8 team move up to number 4 by beating an overrated team? It's just all these things. At the end of the day, I think FSU should have been in no matter what the outcome in the playoff is. If they get slaughtered, they get slaughtered. That's just what happens. Yeah. You never know, in a month they could be prepared for that team. But then at the end of the day, the NCAA had the right to do what they did based on their own policies. So it's just one of those things, and I look forward to seeing what Georgia does to FSU for all my FSU fans.
Well, if they voted on last year, the ACC, like FSU, then they would have expanded and they would be in the playoffs.
Exactly. They voted not to expand it this year, but to wait another year. So.
Yeah, they pushed it too. They did this whole big marketing pushing it to make sure they don't. And I wonder if that played a part in that. I still think it should be, my 4 was always going to be Michigan, Washington, because of what I saw the last 2 games from FSU. And I just didn't want to see another unprepared team to go in. You knew schematically from schemes, you knew that TCU is not going to do very well against Georgia, and you knew that they're going to pull away and Georgia's going to win. Georgia's just a juggernaut. So I felt like they needed to be in there. I had them as a 3rd seed. I put on social media 3rd, and then I had Bama squeaking in because they won the SEC. And then that was it. So I had to leave out Texas, which is and Texas beat Bama. So, it was crazy.
Yeah.
So, we'll see, though. 14 points. Yeah.
Yep.
So, you got anything?
Just one last thing. I mean,
sure.
From what the pictures I've seen and what I've heard, you have your own podcast, correct?
I do.
You want to share about that real quick before we close out?
Yeah, I have the Mike Sizemore podcast, and I had this is my fifth one.
Okay.
I've been a part of a couple of those, and I had two that were my own. So I'm sort of rebranding at this point. And so not to simply focus on one or two topics, but to expand it a little bit more. So I've got it out there, but I've not really gotten this one cranked up yet. But it's coming. So yeah.
Any pointers for us that we can?
I think you guys are doing a phenomenal job. I think that again, a buddy of mine that helped me get started in this says that a lot of podcasts, people that get started in doing this, get to about 5 or 6 or 7 episodes and then they stop. So getting to, I guess this will be number 10.
It's 10.
This is a significant milestone to get to 10. You get to 25. That's another one. Then 50. Then 100. And we say we don't focus on the numbers, but we really we do. But it's going to grow organically over time. And I think what you're doing certainly fits a market that is much needed by far, and I'd say just keep doing what you're doing. The fact that it's not really scripted, that it is there is some banter in here, and you're not looking for it to be absolutely perfect every time. That's what makes this special and allows it to grow, is because you are just being you. You're not trying to be something that you're not. So these are really big pluses that are going to continue to help you guys grow.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You hear that, Ethan? He likes the banter.
Ethan
did hear our shout out.
Ethan, did he like it?
He said it was on
Ethan,
double the
like
speed. He texted me and he said, "I heard your shout out on double the speed."
Oh, I gotta meet old Ethan.
Yeah, so you'll meet him one day. He's actually going to be planting a church, so he'll be coming here for a couple days, maybe in January, February, to
we'll meet old Ethan.
Kind of learn. So yeah, we may have to see if he wants to come on the podcast.
Yeah, to see what tips. He's a guru. Let us know.
We're so grateful to have had Daddy Mike Sizemore with us today. We're so grateful. He is a part of the Male Cartel, and he is sharing the different shows and participating on socials, and so we're so grateful for that. We're grateful even for the Ethans who don't like the banter.
Yep.
You get 2 shout outs 2 weeks in a row. So, but yeah, we do appreciate everyone who does share the show, who likes it, who participates on the social media, who gives us a review and all that stuff. That really helps us, and we're so grateful for it.
Yeah, if you find us beneficial, do us a huge favor and share it and leave us a comment. Let us know what you think of the content. Let us know also if there's ways that we can improve. We want to get better. We want to get better every day, and we try
sharing
really hard.
it and hitting that like button. That really works with the analytics, and that gets you out there more and more. So those who are listening and watching, hit that like button. That's going to help this to grow.
Yep, like it, analytics. You heard it here first.
All right.
Hey, well,
Mike.
Thanks for tuning in. Get 1% better. We'll see you guys next time.
1% better every day. See ya.
Bye.
Thank you for joining the Male Cartel podcast. Be sure to subscribe and share to help other men join the cartel. You can also keep up with us on social media and at malecartel.com.